The Battle of Haji Pir Pass of 1965, the Forgotten Mountain of Fire, a historical narrative of valor, strategy, and political compromise. The monsoon clouds had gathered thick and dark over the Pir Panjal range in the August of 1965. The air hung heavy with the scent of rain and gunpowder, the valleys echoing not with peace but with whispers of war. Beneath those grey skies, among slippery slopes and treacherous ridges, a chapter of the Indian military history was about to be written, one of greed, blood, and glory. It would not be called the Battle of Haji Pir Pass. It would be called the Battle of Haji Pir Pass, a victory that defined the courage of India's soldiers and a decision that would later test the nation's political conscience. Prelude: Operation Gibraltar and the Storm in the Mountains. The conflict didn't begin with open gunfire, it began with infiltration. In the early August 1965, Pakistan launched Operation Gibraltar, a clandestine plan designed to destabilize Jammu and Kashmir from the within. Thousands of trained soldiers, disguised as local insurgents, were sent across the line of control, then the ceasefire line, with orders to incite rebellion, sabotage communications, and create chaos that would invite a larger conflict. Infiltrators moved through the forested ravines and rugged mountain passes, especially through the one key route, the Haji Pir Pass, a high altitude corridor between Uri and Poonch. This pass, at an elevation of about 8,652 feet, was not just a geographical feature, it was a strategic artery. Whoever controlled Haji Pir controlled the primary infiltration route into the Kashmir Valley. When reports started flooding in from villagers about strangers with guns speaking Punjabi, it became clear to Indian intelligence that Pakistan's strategy had begun to unravel. The Indian army, initially maintaining a defensive posture, decided to strike at the root of the problem, the infiltration routes themselves. Thus born the bold and daring plan, Operation Bakshi. The man who would write history. The operation was named after Brigadier Zorawar Chand Bakshi, the charismatic and fearless commander of the Pir Panjal Brigade. A soldier of iron will and unshakable calm, Bakshi had earned his reputation during earlier conflicts, known for leading from the front and inspiring through personal courage. Under his command were the crucial two units, the one para led by Lieutenant Colonel Ranjit Singh Dyal and the 19th Punjab Regiment responsible for the southern assault from Poonch. Together, those forces were tasked with the near impossible: capture Haji Pir Pass, despite difficult terrain, poor weather, and a well-entrenched enemy. The plan was both brilliant and audacious. The first para would attack from the north, beginning from the Uri sector, climbing steep ridges, taking enemy positions by surprise. Simultaneously, 19 Punjab would attack from the south, from the Poonch sector, moving through equally treacherous terrain. The two prongs would converge at the pass, cutting off enemy reinforcements and securing the infiltration route. It was a plan that would require not just precision, it demanded superhuman endurance. The road to Haji Pir: rain, mud, and fire. On 26 August 1965, under torrential rain and freezing winds, the assault began. The soldiers of one para moved silently through knee-deep mud, their uniforms soaked heavy. The darkness of the night was pierced occasionally by lightning illumination, illuminating the slopes and the silhouettes of men determined to climb even when mules struggled to stand. Every step was agony. The rocks were slippery, the air thin, the enemy machine guns roared from above. Yet Colonel Yet Lieutenant Colonel Ranjit Singh Dyal and his men pressed forward. They knew retreat was not an option. The mission's success depended on sheer persistence. From the south, 19 Punjab Regiment faced equally brutal resistance. Pakistani defenses were strong and the bunkers were camouflaged, as well as artillery fire were relentless. But Indian determination was stronger still. Slowly, through attrition and courage, they began to close the gap. The men of one para fought like ghosts in the fog. They flanked enemy positions, climbed vertical cliffs in pouring rain, and launched close quarter attacks with grenades and bayonets. It was raw, brutal, and personal. In the chaos, Lieutenant General Dyal led from the front, shouting orders through the storm, rallying his exhausted men. Every inch of ground gained came at the cost of blood, but inch by inch they climbed higher towards history. The final ascent, storming the pass, in the night of 26th of August 1965 turned into one of the most legendary nights in the Indian military history. At dawn, with visibility still poor, the one para launched their final assault on Haji Pir Ridge. Pakistani defenders, entrenched and confident, had no idea that the Indian troops had already climbed behind them, using an alternate route through the steep southern spur. When the battle erupted, it was sudden and overwhelming. Grenades exploded inside bunkers. The cries of battle echoed through the fog. Pakistani resistance crumbled under the combined assault from front and flank. By noon on 28 August, the Indian tricolour fluttered over Haji Pir Pass. The soldiers, who had been climbing and fighting without sleep for 2 days, stood drenched, bleeding, and exhausted, but victorious. The infiltration route was now in Indian hands. The soldiers didn't cheer loudly, they simply looked around the mountains that had killed them, and the fog now seemed gentler, and at the flag that swayed silently, a symbol of everything that had endured. For them, victory was not about glory, it was about survival, duty, and the brothers who didn't make it. The southern push and closing of the trap. While one para secured the northern approach, 19 Punjab regiment had continued their push from the south. They captured Bedori and Rinconture, key positions that linked the approach roads. By August 29, both units established control over the pass and surrounding heights. The infiltration routes connecting Uri, Poonch, Rawalkot were now severed. The entire western infiltration corridor of the Pakistan's Operation Gibraltar had effectively collapsed. Victory was more than tactical, it was symbolic. Haji Pir was considered nearly impregnable. Its capture shocked the Pakistan High Command and electrified Indian morale across the front lines. Newspapers across India hailed the victory, and Brigadier Bakshi and Lieutenant Colonel Dyal became living legends. But for the men on the ground, came celebration came after duty. They fortified the area, dug new positions, and waited for counterattacks that never came. The enemy had been routed. The political aftermath, triumph turned to regret. Yet what began as stunning military triumph would soon turn into one of the most controversial chapters in India's post-war diplomacy. After the larger Indo-Pak War of 1965 ended, the Tashkent Agreement was signed on 10th of January 1966. As part of the peace terms, both nations agreed to return captured territories. Among the areas India handed was Haji Pir Pass. For the soldiers who had bled to conquer it, the news was devastating. They couldn't believe the same ground they had taken at such terrible cost would now be surrendered on paper. Lieutenant Colonel Doyle, when told reportedly said, "We can always capture it again if needed." It was the soldier's answer, stoic, loyal, bitterly aware of the futility of politics. Historians and military strategists later criticized the decision heavily. The pass, they argued, was a permanent infiltration route, and surrendering it meant reopening the same artery of conflict. Indeed, over the following decades, infiltration through the same corridor would continue to trouble India, validating those fears. Leadership and legacy. Both Brigadier J.C. Bakshi and Lieutenant Colonel Ranjit Singh Dyal went on to have illustrious military careers. Bakshi became one of India's most decorated generals, fearless, cerebral, and adored by the troops. Dyal too earned enduring respect. His leadership at Hajipir became a case study in mountain warfare and tactical brilliance. For their bravery, Lieutenant Colonel Ranjit Singh Dyal was awarded the Mahavir Chakra and Brigadier Bakshi received the Vishisht Seva Medal. But their true reward lay in the immortal respect of every soldier who ever served in the mountains. The mountain today, memory and silence. Today, the Haji Pir Pass lies on the other side of the Yellow Sea, returned under the Tashkent Agreement. The terrain remains rugged and cold, the wind carrying echoes of a battle that once raged through the cliffs. In Indian military academies, the Battle of Haji Pir is studied as a textbook example of mountain warfare excellence, a combination of tactical brilliance, physical endurance, and raw courage. But outside the barracks and history books, it remains a forgotten victory. Most young Indians have never heard of the men who fought and died there. There are no films, no parades, no monuments that match its significance. Yet for those who know, the silence of Haji Pir speaks louder than words. It tells the story of soldiers who climbed the storm, defied gravity, and seized the impossible, only to have it taken from them by the politics of peace. Reflections between the sword and the pen. The story of Haji Pir is not just about war, it's about the eternal conflict between the soldier's sacrifice and the statesman's negotiation. It is about the cruel irony that victory in battle doesn't always mean triumph in policy. For the Indian Army, Haji Pir stands as a symbol of what can be achieved through courage. For the nation's political leadership, it stands as a reminder that the true cost of peace is often paid in the blood of soldiers. If war is an instrument of policy, as Clausewitz wrote, then the story of Haji Pir is a case study in how that instrument was wielded perfectly on the field and perhaps too hastily sheathed at the table. Epilogue: The Eternal Flame. In the high mountains where fog rolls like ghosts and silence reigns supreme, a flame that burns, not of fire, but of memory. It burns in every regiment's heart that once climbed those cliffs. It burns in the history of India's soldiers who know that their greatest victories are often their most forgotten ones. And though the tricolor no longer flies over Hajipir as it once did, and that alone ensures that its story, like the wind over those ridges, will never truly die.